Passion Harvest. Hello, passionate listeners. Welcome to Passion Harvest, where we aim to inspire you to live a passionate life. I've got an awesome guest today. I'm so excited to have her on the show, Krista Gorman. Krista is a physician assistant who only 3 weeks after graduating from her PA training program suffered cardiopulmonary arrest and died while in labor with her daughter. During the 8 minutes she was without a detectable heartbeat, her consciousness transitioned into what we call the afterlife, where she underwent a profound reconnection with the most divine love that she experienced as the universe. Krista is an active member of the International Association for Near-Death Studies, IANDS, and presented in the 2014 and 2015 annual conferences. She has also presented at the 2016 and 17 conferences alongside her husband, Ainsley Threadgold, who also has experienced an NDE. Some of her story and the lessons she learned in the afterlife are shared in her book, I Died and Learned How to Live, which is available on Amazon. This is her story and this is her passion. Krista, I'm so excited to have you on to Passion Harvest. Really welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
I've got a lot of questions. I don't know where to start. But I guess people, are fascinated by NDEs. Would you mind just, if you feel comfortable talking about that, the lead up to that, and in labor with your daughter?
Yes.
Who's called Maggie, by the way?
Yes, Maggie. My Maggie.
Maggie.
Yeah, I was induced into labor. So when my labor wasn't progressing fast enough, they were getting a little bit concerned. It had been about 13 hours or so. And Maggie's heart rate was dropping very low, dangerously low. And in my training as a PA, I knew that the first time that happened, that a C-section was inevitable. Right. So when I saw her heart rate drop, I felt sort of a drop in my heart, actually, as well, because I really wanted to be able to deliver her myself. So there was this little resistant feeling. I was like, oh, I need a C-section. I know I do. So the midwife came in and the next thing to do is put an internal monitor on the baby. And that involves screwing an electrode into their scalp. So when they did that to her, she had a reflex, I believe, and she just kicked very hard and pushed amniotic fluid into my bloodstream. And my body saw it as foreign and surrounded it with cells to try to get rid of it. Well, those cells clotted off my lungs, the vasculature in my lungs. So all of a sudden, after this occurred, after the electrode was placed, or while it was being placed, I had trouble breathing, and very, very rapidly, and I'm talking like a matter of seconds, the nurses had oxygen on me, had me turned onto my left side, and they were wheeling me out of the room to the labor and delivery room across the hall, to the operating room across the hall, and calling code blue.
Which is not a good code blue. I understand is not.
It's not good.
Okay.
And I passed out. I say passed out. I went out, or I died in the hallway. My last memory was of just trying to suck air into my lungs, and it was like trying to breathe through a teeny tiny straw. I just couldn't get any more air. And the next point of my awareness was being far above my body, although I didn't recognize me on the table. I didn't know that was me. I didn't know that was a body. I didn't know people were around me. I had no reference for anything that I could see. And I could see. That was the only sort of sense that I had, other than my understanding that I was Krista. I was still my sort of consciousness.
Right.
And although I had no memories of being human, I didn't know what human was. All that existed for me was my vision and feeling. And I felt interested. I felt sort of neutrally like, oh, that's very interesting. I wonder what's going on. But I wasn't thinking. It was all feeling.
Right.
So I watched the body. I saw the body, and I saw as black particles came shooting up from it. It was really like around my chest and sort of head area. And they came shooting up to where my vision was and sort of surrounded me in this undulating kind of static cloud. And I thought, again, how interesting this is. And I looked back down and I saw my doctor, and I now know he was delivering Maggie. And there was like something in a blue towel. And I saw a man walk in the door and stand there for a moment in blue scrubs. And he just sort of stood there for a second. Then he walked up to the edge of the bed. And I later found out that my doctor's partner showed up to help him during the delivery of Maggie and a little bit of the aftermath. So again, I'm up there and I'm looking and I see this happen, and I see them hand Maggie to somebody at my right shoulder, and she turned around very fast. And I thought, wait, I want to know what that is. And I drifted around the other side of the room towards my left side, and there was somebody at my left shoulder putting something into my chest. And I was having that feeling of really wanting to know more, feeling more connected, like more attached to the situation, whereas before I was very detached. And as soon as that feeling started to grow within me, I felt a tug to my left. And it was as if somebody's pulling on your shirt. Right. And I was like, no, I want to stay. And it pulled harder. And I realized, just intuitively knew that I needed to go. And I felt, okay. And as soon as I felt that, I was pulled from the room. I went through the wall and through this white, bright flash of space and into the same particles I was, very dense this time. And I was moving along, although it was imperceptible. And I could see next to me, there was the dense particles, and then it would become sort of fluid-like, and it was sort of gray and a little bit of white, and then it would go back to the dense particles. And all of a sudden I stopped, and I had an instantaneous download of information. It was like a funnel. And then it all came to one point, and that point was love. And love was sort of everything. Love was the answer to all the questions I'd ever had in my existence here. It was the answer to everything. And I felt the love. I felt this incredible bliss, beyond words in description. Mm-hmm. It was absolutely the best feeling ever. And I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And then off to my right, there was a little white sort of speck in the darkness, and I wanted to go to it. I had a desire to go, and it wanted me to come to it. So I started moving in that direction. And as I moved closer, it got wider and wider and wider. And pretty soon it was sort of a wide opening, like a circle, with a cloudy sort of essence to it, foggy, I guess I could say. And there were shadow beings there. And in the front was a little boy. And I would describe him as like a little Tom Sawyer kind of boy. He was like, I just knew. He was about 7, and he was wearing this wide brim, round brim hat and overalls. And he needed my help. And there were adult shadow beings behind him. And they were just sort of there. And I wanted to help him. So I moved into that space. And the shadow beings sort of fanned out in a bit of a line on one side of the space. And I was sort of in the middle, and I looked around and I didn't see the boy. And I wondered, oh, where did he go? And I felt the desire of all of these shadow beings for my help. They all wanted my help. And I wanted to help them all. So as soon as they felt that, they started to come at me sort of one by one and dart away. And I didn't know what they were doing at first. And I realized that as they were doing it, my vision started to sort of fade. And I felt, I don't want to be here anymore. And I was pulled out of there. So Wow. When I was pulled out, I was back into the really dense particulate matter. And then fairly quickly merged through another opening that was less distinct. It was in the dark particulate matter. And I merged through there, and it was this glorious, beautiful landscape of bright yellow flowers out ahead of me, and this evergreen forest to my right, and to my left, a moss a rocky moss-covered, beautiful waterfall. And then in the distance, there were undulating hills, green hills and trees and a blue sky. And it was just beautiful. And I merged with it. It was me and I was it, and we were one. And it was just the most amazing feeling. And then I was flanked on both sides by these tall beings. And they were probably, I would say, like 9 feet tall. And they were there to support me. And they communicate, everything was through feeling. So they communicated to me, you can stay here, you can go beyond this to what comes next, or you can go back. And I could have stayed there forever and ever and eternally. I didn't know what came next, and I didn't know what I left behind. But I chose to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I felt that, I started moving backwards. And they turned towards me and communicated again through feeling, if you go back, you need to share what you learned here. And I said, okay. And I wasn't quite sure exactly what that was until I had a recall of my NDE about 3 weeks after I got home from the hospital. I was in the ICU right after the event. They got me back after 8 minutes of pulselessness.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was from 9:18 in the morning until 9:26 in the morning. That's what's documented.
Right.
And then I had started to bleed uncontrollably during the C-section, which happens after an amniotic fluid embolism. So they were transfusing me in the ICU. They had me intubated, sedated because I was very restless, and they had no idea what sort of shape I'd be in when they brought me. They had induced a coma, and then they were going to bring me out of it as soon as I was stable enough. And I was stable enough about 24 hours after the event, and they started to bring me out of it. And as I came out of it, they realized that I was here. I was making, eye movements. And so that was very encouraging to everyone. Yeah. Initially, they had been told I had a 50-50 chance of surviving. And if I did survive, that I would need 24-hour care for the rest of my life. So my family was prepared for that.
Yeah.
And so about 36 hours after the event, they took the tube out, and I started to come around. They decreased the medicine that they had me on to keep me from thrashing about the bed. And then at one point, very soon after that, I could hear something going on outside the ICU. And I wanted to know what it was. So I unhooked myself from everything, climbed out of the bed. I climbed over the railing and I flung the curtain open. And I just wanted to know what was going on. And my family saw me and came rushing over. The nurses came rushing over. They got me back into bed, got me back hooked up to everything. And I was really mad at that point. I just wanted to go home. I was fine. And I just wanted to go home. So they were amazed. They couldn't believe it. They didn't let me go home, but they did let me leave the ICU and go to a private room. And I was very, I had no short-term memory those first few days. I had to keep being reminded of why I was there, that I had a daughter, that my name was Krista. And then as I continued to improve on the 6th day, they brought Maggie to me. She had been moved to another hospital so she could be in the neonatal ICU. She had some issues with her breathing when she first came out. And so they monitored her, and she was doing great. And they released her and brought her to me. And I remember them handing her to me, and I already knew her. I was like, yeah, this is not our first meeting. And then I remember I could feel everybody in the room. I could feel their fear. I could feel their feeling of not being sure how everything was and how I was going to be. And I thought they had, then I felt they had expectations of me. And then I felt like, okay, well, what should I do? Oh, I should count her fingers and her toes, because that's what every new mom
Yeah.
does, right? So I had to play, and I was counting. And I just looked at her, and I could see almost through her eyes. It was like, I just felt like we had just known each other before. And at this point, I didn't have any recall of my experience. I went home and I was just blissed out completely. And my family was like, what is going on? Because Krista was very type A before this. And I was all about being a PA. I had just graduated 3 weeks before from my PA program. And that was all wiped away. I didn't have any memory of that. I didn't want to be a PA. And all I wanted to do was share this love, but I didn't know what the love was. And so I just was in my own little space with my daughter and just loving her and just being completely content and no anxiety. Nothing could be wrong in the world. Everything was perfect, just the way it was. And then about 3 weeks later, I woke up one morning after having the recall of my near-death experience in a dream during sleep, I should say, because it wasn't a dream. It was sort of the universe was giving me not my knowledge of it.
Yes.
And I feel like it was because before that, I would have discounted it in this 3D world. I would have sort of said, oh, that's impossible.
That's a dream. Or
Yes, it was my brain chemicals, going crazy. But because it came through at a time when I had recovered a little bit up to that point. I was more aware of this world and who I was, and things were coming back to me. I was remembering things, and then this happened, and it was my entire experience. And I woke up and I was like, oh my God, that's why I've been feeling this way. And it was phenomenal. And I just wanted to shout from the hilltops what had happened. And I tried to share it with my husband, who was very sympathetic, but he didn't quite get it. And I wasn't getting the response from people that I wanted, because this is the most amazing thing ever. And you guys are just like, oh, we're just really glad you came back. We're glad you're okay. So I started doing research online, and I found Jeffrey Long, who is an NDE researcher. You probably are aware of him. And I emailed him, and I just said, I think something may have happened. I'm not really sure, but I just wanted to contact you and see if you had any suggestions for me about who to talk to. And he gave me his website, and he said, you'll find stories there that you may be able to relate to. And then he said, and pay attention to your dreams. And right then it was validating to me, because my scientist was like, that wasn't anything. Again, the ego, that my scientist was trying to discount it, even though every point in my being knew that it was true, that it happened. So, I was validated there. And I remember sitting in front of the computer just sobbing, because it was like, thank you.
Someone understands me.
Yes. And that was in 2000. So there wasn't a whole lot that I could find on NDEs at that time. I did find the International Association of Near-Death Studies, and I did reach out to them as well. And there was a local chapter here in Sarasota. And I tried reaching out to them, but I didn't really recall getting anywhere. But regardless, I did find some people to talk to locally, and they had both had very religious experiences and wanted to talk about the religiousness of their experience. And I couldn't relate to that. So, I sort of just put it away. I had to work. I had to raise my daughter. I was a wife, and I had to get it together and start living my life. But the whole time, this sort of agreement that I had made, this commitment that I had made to share this profound love, I needed to do that too, but I had no idea how to be that love in this world. It just wasn't taught to me. I didn't feel supported. And everyone wanted me to be the old me, and I didn't really know how to be that either. So I sort of floundered around, and just kept, my NDE was there every day, and I would just push it away and go on and go to the grocery store, or take care of my daughter and
Yeah.
go to work, do all the things that we do here. But yeah, so that was my experience, and that's how it sort of immediately affected me in the month afterwards.
Wow. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for sharing that story. That was incredible. I do have a few questions about your NDE.
Mhm.
You talk about when you went to these different, I don't know how you would term them, but planes or realities.
Mhm.
You had no awareness of your physical body as such. You could call it a soul or a spirit. You weren't in the physical, feeling your physical body.
Correct.
And you talk about the shadow beings.
Mhm.
Is it like when we see images of just basically a dark shadow when we've seen photos? Is that is that what they look like? And were they, obviously from your description, they weren't necessarily positive beings?
Yeah, what did they felt like? They felt sort of, to me, in my perception, they felt sort of neutral,
Hmm.
in that I didn't feel that they were bad and I didn't feel they were good. They just sort of were. And they simply needed help. They were what I would say, you know how when you lay down on the ground and you draw with chalk around your body,
Yes.
and yeah, and create, or go up against a wall or whatever. They were sort of shaped like that,
Okay.
um, but very indistinct. There were no faces or personalities or anything.
Hmm.
Um, they were individuals, but I couldn't identify any of them. And how I felt was, again, neutral. I wasn't afraid. Um, and the love that I had felt in before that, before I entered that space, that was still there, but it was sort of peripheral. This other sort of neutrality came in. And what I realized years later, after finally coming to a point where I could process my experience,
Yes.
I realized that in my life up to that point, I had tended to sacrifice myself for others, as far as not putting myself first, like so many of us do.
Beautiful analogy. Yes.
Yes, and that's where, in that space, I chose me when I could have chosen differently. And I felt like that was the universe and me, because I feel like I created my NDE and the universe created it as well. Like we were co-creators of this
Hmm.
experience. And it was meant for me to check in. And where are you, Krista, in your expansion here in this 3D world? Are you where you would like to be, or do you have more work to do? And I felt like that point in that space was a very important piece of my evolution here. If I was going to continue to expand in my awareness and evolve, I needed to choose me first, to love me before I can truly love others. So that was my lesson there.
And it's a very hard lesson, I think, for all of us. And it's almost like I feel that you came into your power. You owned your incredible power and beauty that you are.
Yes, thank you. And that we all are.
That we all are, yes.
Yes, absolutely. That we all are. And we all have the ability to love ourselves to the extent that we are loved, that source loves us, the universe loves us. Um, we just have the task or the experience of awakening to that here. And that's what relationship is. We're mirrors for one another, to grow in awareness of who we really are. And that catapulted me. The experience really catapulted me forward, because I have things to do here. I have people to speak with. I have things to share, love to share. And I needed to have that experience in order to move forward.
Lovely. And you say when you came back from your, at the time you didn't know it was a near-death experience, but you had this feeling of overwhelming bliss, which is quite common in NDE experiences.
Yeah.
And you also talk about how you could feel everyone in the room when you first came to in the hospital, and STEs, which is spiritually transformative experiences. It's quite common for your consciousness to be heightened and your psychic abilities to be heightened after an NDE.
Yes.
Which is very interesting.
Yes. And I found that as I integrated it more into my life over the years, that I've become more so, in my ability to interpret the energies and to sort of navigate within them, navigate myself while maintaining my center of being and being the lovingly detached human that I am here. It's helped heal relationships in my life and helped to guide me in my work, in my literal employment, my job as a PA. And it's been very, very important. I just met with someone that this morning that I've known for probably about 6 years in the capacity of first an acquaintance, and then as my patient in the emergency room, and then my patient in pain management where I just came from. So it's been very interesting, and we talked about these sort of this sort of journey that we've had of running into each other, and we talked a lot about the things actually that we're talking about now. We talked about it this morning, and she and I shared some wonderful conversation about all of it, and she's on her journey of awakening, and so this stuff really does help. It helps people to awaken.
And I love how, I just picked up the word when you said detach, because I think, especially on my journey, and I can only speak for myself, but I think detachment, people think sometimes when you detach yourself, it's being, and I don't even like the word selfish or cold, but it's not cold. It's more not becoming so emotive and just observing the world in which we live, as, everything is a mirror, which I think you talked about mirrors before, but detachment, conscious detachment, I think, is quite a step forward.
Yeah, I agree. It's a way of affirming ourselves in that moment, and it's a way of honoring the other person and in them being who they are in that moment. When we're lovingly detached, we're able to, and I use the word accept, but allow situations to be as they are without judgment, without our imposing our intentions or imposing our ego into the situation. For me, it allows for healthier relationships. It allows for, I guess, over and above everything, it allows for the unimpeded flow of energy of the universe through me and into other people and things. There's no resistance there in being lovingly detached. You're just sort of allowing and letting everything be as it is, because it's perfect.
You explained that so well. I think I'm going to replay that and probably quote it. I also want to talk about your love. You experienced the love for someone who obviously hasn't experienced. What did this incredible love? How can I say? If you can explain it in more detail, what did it feel like?
It felt, oh boy, this is one of the biggest challenges.
This is a tricky one.
It's putting the experience into human words.
I'm sorry to do this, and I know there was no words at all, but I just wanted to ask the question.
No, it's great. Pardon me. It's one of those things. That's I've heard it said that no tongue has soiled it. it's like we have feeble attempts to describe it, but I will feebly attempt to describe it. It is the ultimate magnificence of all that is. It's the most amazing love that you could ever imagine experiencing, and then multiply that by infinity. Nothing else, speaking from the perspective of our 3D world, nothing in this world compares to it that most of us have experienced thus far. And one of the things, that's why it was so challenging for me to bring that love into my life and share it with other people. I had to first sort of find my way back to the love that I am. That love is what we are.
Yes.
And we just forget when we come here. We forget. And we have these experiences that are loving and not so loving, and loving and not so loving. And the extent of the loving experiences varies tremendously. So, we grow up into this world with various ideas of what love is. But what I experienced love as was absolutely everything. And it is the most unconditional, magnificent, blissful feeling. Unconditional love is like nothing else. And we are perfect. And being good with our perfection, being good with who we are, with what we are, with everything in our life, just as it is, that scrapes it, that sort of touches it. That feeling that I had. It's freedom. It's phenomenal.
Everything.
It's everything. Yeah.
And even though your experience was many years ago, you're still, significantly touched and motivated by it, that you mentioned that they said, come back to this life, or come back to your 3D world or your humanness, and spread your message. If you had a message in a sentence, and it's, God, I'm going in words again.
It's all we have.
Oh gosh, I know. Well, there wouldn't be much of a podcast or an interview if we spoke energetically. We'd just be sitting here for an hour. What is yes, I know your message is love and everything, but if you had to put it in one phrase or one paragraph or one sentence, what is your main message to the audience that's listening?
Oh my gosh. Well,
no pressure.
Love. It's that simple.
Okay.
If we put love in the forefront of every decision that we make, every thought that we have, every interaction that we have, the love of self first, because we're obligated to ourselves first, then love of others. And if we have love in the forefront of what we are, who we are, how we are, then everything else takes care of itself. Love truly is the answer to everything.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you for sharing that. And talking about love, let's segue into your husband, who also has an NDE.
Yeah.
Ainsley. How did that happen?
It was
how did you meet?
Well, we agreed to meet before we came here.
Okay.
When he had a near-death experience when he was 13, he was hit by a car. And during his experience, I appeared to him energetically. I appeared to him and said, "You don't know me, but I want you to come find me."
Wow, that's amazing.
He didn't have a recall of his experience until he was 35. He was 13 when he was hit. And he recalled it during a regression hypnosis session, because he had been having all these things happen to him through his life that he couldn't explain. And he kept getting closer and closer to the answer into his 20s and 30s. And then finally got his answer during this therapy session where he recalled his near-death experience. He's from the United Kingdom. He was friends with a woman who had had a near-death experience as well, and wanted to start a Facebook group called Positivity Power Movement.
Okay, nice.
And so the two of them, they started this group But what had actually originally brought them together was Dr. Penny Sartori, who has written several books about near-death experience. She was an ICU nurse in the UK and started studying these phenomena when patients would report them to her in the ICU. So I was drawn to her because I was looking for a publisher for my book, I Died and Learned How to Live. And I came across Watkins Publishing, and her book was there, and she was a nurse. And I thought, oh, she'll get me. So I'm going to send her an email. And I just sent her a quick hello. I'm reaching out to you just to say hi and connect. And she got back to me fairly quickly. And she said, I'd like to connect you with Kelly Walsh, who is also in the UK. Now, Ainsley, when he was on his journey to recall his NDE, he had gone to an osteopathic physician because from his accident, he always had sciatica and he needed to be adjusted. And then he mentioned to the doctor, he's like, yeah, he said, that was from my accident. He's like, since then I haven't been able to wear a watch, or I mess up electrical equipment, it seems. And the doctor had Penny's book in his office. And he said, I think that you might benefit from reading this book. So he took the book and he read it. And he's like, I found myself in that book. And I reached out to Penny, and Penny said, oh, let me put you in touch with Kelly Walsh. So Penny was the sort of the middle person here orchestrating all of this. And so Ainsley and I became aware of each other on the Facebook group. And we were both at points in our lives where our marriages were ending. And the synchronous thing was that he had been with his spouse for 17 years. I had been married to my spouse for 17 years.
Long time.
And we both met our ex-spouses when we were young. And it was very interesting, that sort of synchronicity there. But we were friends, and we were just chatting, and he mentioned, like I don't think I'm going to be married much longer. And I said, that's really interesting, because I don't think I am either. We're sort of on this path together. So we both had, a separation in our lives, and he and I sort of lost touch for a while, and then reconnected again months later and started talking again. And we were both healing from our relationships and the things that we were meant to learn from them, and recognizing all that. And so we shared a lot of our experiences along that path, and it just evolved, into a love. And the interesting thing was when we first connected, I watched a video of him, and it just hit me. Like, I felt like I was hit by a train. It was his energy and who he was. It just knocked me off my feet. And me being the sort of neutral scientist that I am, I was like, well, this is very interesting. I'm just
not reactive.
Yeah, not reactive. Okay. But at the same time, we're all talking about love and positivity. And it's like, yes. Well, I loved him, as a human being, but I felt something a little bit different, a little bit more than that in it. And I wasn't really sure about that. But it evolved over time, and it was sort of like, I look back now, and he understands too. It's like there was a recognition there of us, and of us taking this journey together. And we've had multiple things happen in our relationship over the years. This was in 2015, where the non-locality connection is there and very strong. And it just, every time that happens, it's sort of like a little hug from the universe. It feels like, yeah, you guys are doing great. You're on your path together. And he has the same desires to share love and help other people.
Right.
So he's here now, living in the States. We got married a few years ago. And
congratulations.
Thank you. And he immigrated last year, and so he's here now, and we're walking our path under the same roof.
Wow. I'm just thinking, imagine for me, like, I'm just getting so emotive at your story. I'm trying not to react, but how I would be so nervous after all this time corresponding on Facebook or whatever it might be, actually meeting him in person.
Oh,
was that
the story? it was like one of those movie moments where you're like, oh, in
Oh,
the airport. And I flew to the UK and met him in the airport, and
I would have been so nervous.
it was funny because, I get nervous,
Yeah.
but I really wasn't up until the plane was physically landing on the runway. And then I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm trying to steady myself and I'm shaking and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this going to be like? And it was just like, he and I were the only two that existed. That's how it felt. And in that airport. And yeah, we floated for the 10 days that I was there.
What a wonderful love story.
Yeah, it's been amazing. It's been the greatest. My daughter was my NDE, my daughter together were like the most amazing things ever. And coming together with Ainsley now is right par with all of that. It's like the best gift in the universe. Yeah.
Wow. And that's beautiful. I'm just pausing for a minute because it's such a beautiful love story. I've got to say congratulations again.
Thank you.
I know we were just chatting briefly before the show started about synchronicities that I thought we might mention on the show, about your career and how things just happen for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've sort of struggled a bit in my career. It's co-created.
Mm-hmm.
My struggle really has been finding an area of medicine where I feel is best aligned with me. In Western medicine, it's challenging for me to find that alignment. It had been. So I've dabbled in different specialties over the years. I've been a PA for 20 years, and I never really found my niche. I was in the ER most recently for over 7 years, and then I moved into it's interventional pain management. And people say, "Oh my gosh, how do you deal with people in pain every day, all day?"
Yeah.
And I can, because I have gone through the process of integrating my NDE. I've gone through the process of finding a way to live in my physical body, in this physical world, where I'm practicing things that on a moment by moment basis, which bring me to who I really am in every moment. So my ability to take care of people who are in pain, I'm not absorbing them. I'm not absorbing their energy. I'm steady in my own energy, and I'm there for them. So I'm that solid sort of helper that they need in order to live their life a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Maybe. So that's been my PA journey, and most recently, I have been feeling like something needed to change again. I've been in this position for a year, and I'm sort of feeling like, okay, I'm ready for the next part of my journey. I really am ready. And I asked the universe, please show me what it is that I need to be shown at this point in order to help to move me forward. I'm ready. I am ready. So I was laid off my job.
Oh, yes.
2 weeks later, I was unexpectedly laid off my job.
Do we have to be careful what we ask for?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, kind of, but yes.
Yes, exactly. And we are such powerful manifestors.
Yes.
We are so powerful.
I've learned, sorry to interrupt, but I just have to say when, and to the audience as well, when you ask for something and you allow it happens pretty quickly.
It absolutely that
you've got to get out of the concept of time, because you've got to be patient, but it does start happening very quickly. Your life can change very quickly.
It certainly can. And I couldn't be more grateful, because it sort of gave me the kick in the butt that I needed to start on my next part of my journey. I wasn't actively looking for the next thing or feeling through the next thing. I wasn't quite there. I was sort of like a little bit content. I love my patients, and I got to see them every month.
Right.
And I loved seeing them. I loved hearing how their month was. It's like, I was enjoying it
It
at the
wasn't
same time,
completing you.
but it wasn't completing me. So I was laid off with pay for 3 months.
Okay.
And I was asking, one of the things that I asked the universe for was financial security.
Mm.
I said, I want to have the time to do what I want to do, but be financially secure. That was
Yes.
the general sort of request I had, my desire. And here I am, having all the time I need in the world without having to worry about getting a job tomorrow. And I can do the things that I am inspired to do. So my husband and I decided that we were going to move to Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
And yes, and so I'm in the process right now of securing employment in Hawaii. And my husband, who is not a U.S. citizen, can actually work as a police officer there, as a green card holder, they call it. So he has this opportunity now, because he was a police officer in the UK when he came
Okay.
over. He has this opportunity now to work as a police officer in Hawaii.
Oh, so it can just be transferred
It can,
to
yes, he can just use his skills and
skills.
gain some training and that sort of thing. But he really wants to serve the people of Hawaii. So I have a very good friend that practices as a PA there. She was in my PA school class, and her last name happens to be O'Gorman. Mine is Gorman.
Okay.
So it's like the universe is just going, come on, just has their arm around my shoulder. Come on, we're going to take you this way. This is where you really want to go. And so that's, if it weren't for my being laid off of my job, then I may or may not have decided to venture down this road at this point. And, sorry about the outside noise.
I didn't even hear it. That's fine.
Oh, good. Okay.
But thanks for making note of it.
Hawaii is a very spiritual place. I had traveled there 3 times during the initial point of my like rapid awakening in 2011. And I had some magical experiences while there, and I had wanted to move there then, but my daughter was a tender age, and
Life got in the way. I speak to
yeah.
so many Americans that, the dream is to move to Hawaii. Is there a particular island that is more, I don't necessarily the term spiritual, but is more spiritual than the others, or?
Well, Kauai is sort of known for its high vibrational
Okay.
positioning.
Okay.
And that's where I went. I had a friend that lived there, and I visited her 3 times during twice in 2011 and once in 2013 when I brought my daughter. And I had some very, very magical experiences there. I felt at home, and I felt that I had found my Eden.
Oh.
And it was as if I felt as if I could exist there forever. And that's what I came away with when I left there. And I've always wanted to go back, but then, life sort of carries on, and my daughter, she was very involved in school sports before she graduated a few years ago. And so that took precedence. She's passionate about rowing, and was very good at it. And I would never have taken her away from that. So I stayed. I just resigned myself. I was perfectly content. And, over the last few years, I've become, more and more able to be open again to new possibilities. And then this happened, and it was like, perfect.
I love that. I can't wait to see what, entails in the next part of your journey.
Yeah, me too. Thanks.
Look, sometimes it's scary. It's all new beginnings. It's unknown, but it is very exciting at the same time.
Oh, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. And it's teaching me so much, once again, about walking through fear, being courageous, and allowing and being patient and willing and, oh gosh, having faith that everything is working out to the highest of possibilities. And um, it's been a real growth point for me, and I'm really grateful for it. Yeah.
I'm so excited for you. And you just answered my next question. I always ask, if someone's wanting to live a passionate life, what would they do? And you've just answered that. So anyone, just replay that last bit that Krista said and you'll get your answer.
That's right. Follow your bliss. Absolutely. Follow your
Yeah.
bliss. Yeah.
Krista, it's been such a delight to have you on Passion Harvest. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to have you on the show. And I want to keep in touch, and maybe we'll do another one in a year or two in Hawaii.
Oh, yes.
I can't wait to see all the incredible things that you'll be doing.
Yes. Oh, thank you. That would be wonderful. This has been great.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.